and welcome to this fireside chat with Arun Penmetsa with Storm Ventures. Arun is not only an investor in Flywheel, but a really successful and I would say a really humble investor in the Valley. And Arun, it's a privilege to be sitting down with you today to talk about how you've been an instrumental element in the Flywheel journey. Now, before I turn to Arun and have some conversation with him, I wanted to just kind of preface how we got here today. In my journey, when we were launching Flywheel, and it was a twinkle in the eye, I had the privilege of socializing the idea with Arun briefly. And what you did next was actually quite remarkable. You decided to go on a walk with me. And I think for the next 2 weeks, we walked around Palo Alto, not, you know, not
continuous.
yeah, exactly. We had a chance to get some breaks and walk around. But what that allowed me to do was really think about the idea and how we wanted to attack the problem. And what followed next was the ability to present to the partners and actually get an investment. So I want to start off with a big thank you, because if it wasn't for that one moment, Flywheel wouldn't be here today, a year later, launching our platform and really changing how marketplaces happen.
And thank you for having us on board. It's been a pleasure. Congrats on your launch event. And yeah, excited to talk about where this is going next.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. Why did you decide to invest?
Yeah, so I think there's a handful of reasons. Firstly, when you pitched the idea, one thing that was clear to us was, at me and the Storm team, was just the scale of the opportunity here. Cloud marketplaces have really come up in the last 10, 15 years, and hundreds of billions of dollars are transacted on them. But the challenge is that there's no platform out there today that really makes that easy for the marketplaces, for the sellers, and the buyers. So when you pitched the vision of what Flywheel is becoming today, it became clear that if this existed, then everybody in the ecosystem would benefit. And the second part is, more importantly, just you and the team that you want to build. Because given your experience in the space, it was clear that this is the team that could go build this solution. So the combination of the two meant that it was just a no-brainer to invest in and support you guys.
Well, I'm glad that we went on that walk and you were able to flesh that out. I know you talked a little bit about the due diligence, and I think that's an important piece to bring up. During the due diligence phase, you actually had a chance to look back at, what did the market look like and what does the market opportunity evolve into?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what was your research that yielded, and what was the opportunity in the future that it painted?
So we talked to a lot of buyers and sellers, frankly, just to get a sense of their experience and where they're struggling. And what became clear was all of the processes at that point were manual, right? If you think about, let's just take the AWS marketplace, there's tens of thousands of listings there. I think it was like 14,000 or 15,000 or something, or actually maybe more than that. I'm underselling the number. But very few were actually being transacted. Partly that was because the processes to connect a buyer and seller and enable the transaction was very manual. Partly that was because the sellers and buyers just couldn't meet each other because there was no platform that brought them together. So even though these buyers and sellers want to use the marketplace, or at least use it more than they were, they just had to do things manually. And really the thesis here was, if these cloud marketplaces could become efficient, there really was a way to build a new go-to-market channel here, right? You can obviously use salespeople, you can do marketing, you can do product-led growth, but our belief is cloud marketplaces can be a viable go-to-market for any company in the world. And Flywheel, I think, is the platform that enables that. I mean, it's a bit like, what Salesforce did for SaaS or what Coupa did for procurement. And obviously we are a long way away from that today at Flywheel, but I think this enables that kind of sort of revolution.
Yeah.
So that's the diligence we worked on and tried to validate that, does this thesis make sense?
Yeah. One of the things that you hit on, which is important, is there are, the 20% of the top ISVs are getting traction, and the 80% are starting to see incremental traction as well. But how do you actually put more of a spotlight on it? I was recently talking to a seller who had a chance to sit in front of Matt Garman, and Matt Garman said, there's no doubt that you will have to work hard to make the model work for you. But when you do figure it out, it scales beautifully. And so, the goal for Flywheel was to really bring the buyer to the table as well, figure out their journey, and then start highlighting beyond the traditional ISVs that have gotten visibility, what other ones could be complementary in terms of their technology needs. And I think that's where we're really focusing on the problem as well.
Yeah. And maybe I'll just mention one thing, and
Sure.
I'm sure you'll bring it up later, but part of this process is also just giving visibility into the buyers of how they're using marketplaces today. So, you've talked about this in other places, but buyers often have commits with the cloud vendors, but it's not as transparent today on how much of that commit they've used, they can leverage the cloud marketplaces to really close that gap or even exceed it and get further discounts. So I think just starting there builds trust with the buyers because they can see how their existing commitments and purchases can really work. And beyond that, you add value by helping them transact. So I think there's multiple layers here where Flywheel adds value.
Yeah, it's another great point. When we started looking at the buyer journey, it was important to actually understand what were their current systems that they were having to engage into. We realized there was a lot of data chaos that we could talk a little bit about that existed when we started doing the initial matching. But we also found that 30 to 35% of the commits went underutilized, or they had made the commitment and then came in over the top and used marketplace and weren't able to realize the benefit of that value of marketplace on top of it. So they were literally leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
So, our journey was really to focus on that buyer value and be able to extrapolate that.
And 35% is a staggering number. I mean, that's probably like, billions and billions of dollars just sitting out there, right? So it's a huge impact.
So talk to me about when we started out the journey, one of the pieces was the discovery aspect of it, the matching, right? That was a big emphasis. We all agreed when we raised the initial capital, like we should really think about focusing on that. As you heard, we launched FUID, which is a pretty exciting component. Tell me what your view is on FUID and why did you think we needed to have that?
So, it's an interesting time to launch it because, as everybody knows, this sort of the theme of the time is AI and data and so forth, right? And one of the things that's exciting for Flywheel is you're building this very unique data set. And, putting AI aside, your ability to use Flywheel Universal ID as a way to capture this buyer and seller relationships and the product relationships that exist across all these vendors is very interesting because the same product can be listed on different marketplaces. It can be called by different names. It can have different descriptions. So if I'm a buyer looking to buy a product, I'm at loss because I don't know exactly which of these 30 names is the one I'm looking for. And really, there's no system or product today that normalizes this for them, right? And from a seller perspective, that's also a challenge because you've done all the hard work of listing all these marketplaces, but your buyers can't find you because there's just so much noise. So I think this is one of the first times where you're able to normalize that data and assign a unique sort of identifier to each of these products and SKUs so that down the road, these buyers and sellers can find each other, but also you're able to provide things like analytics and pipeline and sort of metrics that these buyers and sellers can actually act on. So that's very powerful. And in many ways, it's a classic network effect, right? As you see, somebody transact a product, you have an ID, and you can now correlate that with what somebody else is looking for. Because as more and more people buy the same thing, it's almost like voting for a product, right? Even if there's 40 names, this name is the one that's getting all the votes. So that's the right product to list. So it's a version of PageRank, if you want to call it, or network effect. So as that database of IDs grows, I think it'll be a very powerful base on which to provide value to every future customer.
Yeah.
So that's very compelling.
And one of the pieces that we realized was when we looked into the enterprise systems, like we were pulling data out of Coupa and ServiceNow, we saw permutations of a vendor name being misspelled, or like something like Red Hat, which I think Red Hat should start paying me because of how many times I mentioned their name. But Red Hat's name was always one word.
Yeah.
And we realized in marketplaces they were distinguishably captured as two different words. And just being able to simplify that search was a very powerful component. And that allows us to now regulate, what is the actual uh, permutation of that name, not only in their procurement system, their ServiceNow system, but also in the marketplace, normalize it, and then bring it back into the FP&A system and give them the ability to reconcile that too. Now you are actually regulating that transaction in the entire ecosystem, the enterprise ecosystem,
Right.
which is a very powerful piece.
Yeah. And, we're kind of getting into the weeds here, but one of the things you mentioned is just the integrations you have, right?
Yeah.
So this is not just a procurement leader or a salesperson on the ISV side, right? This is touching finance and procurement and IT and go to market. So once this is established, I think entire companies, which is why I said earlier, I think this is a real viable go to market channel for companies, and it cuts across all the departments. So one of the things you guys did very early is kind of build out all these integrations, so the data is much easier to access, and as a result, the value is very quick in terms of providing it to your customers.
Yeah. And we know that the integrations keep getting more and more robust. We are seeing many more integrations being highlighted by buyers.
Yeah.
Systems like Ariba are coming into the mix, Workday is coming in. So it's pretty exciting
Yeah.
stuff as well. Now talk a little bit about the transactions, right? We know that we eventually needed to optimize the buyer transaction flows as well. We had seen some efficiency, but there were a lot of deficiencies on there. Um, Based on what you've seen from us in terms of the transaction flows that we've shared with you and the ones that we have completed with the buyers as well. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's incredible that young startup is able to get some really large names, right? Boomi, Wiz, and there's a long list of large enterprise customers who are trusting you with like millions of dollars of transactions, right? So these are not small 30K, 40K deals. I mean, these are like 7, 8-figure annual numbers, and I think that just really speaks to the urgency of the pain point that is in the market, right? Like these folks are struggling closing these transactions, or if not, they have to take them off the marketplace and do it manually through traditional go-to-market channels. And but I think everybody is starting to realize if this truly works as advertised, it's a huge efficiency and cost gain for them. And frankly, it just makes them more productive as a business. They can move much faster. They can work with vendors much faster. Their sales process is much faster. So I think that's one of the things that's been exciting in the last few months is, it's just the caliber of customers and the frequency of transactions we're starting to see is a huge vote of confidence for Flywheel.
I think the numbers keep going up. Gartner says it's about $1.3 trillion that will effectively transact over the course of the next few years, right? For cloud itself, the migration that's going to take place. The numbers on the marketplace are staggering as well. It's about a $467 billion opportunity that they've identified. And what we're finding is if we didn't exist, that was all going to happen manually. And now as we're starting to identify that and we go into the buyer inventory and we see the opportunity for optimization, believe it or not, that number is quite high.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point, because as investors, one of the things we always think about is what's the wave you're investing behind, or what's the tailwind that will help this company succeed, right? So, and these mega trends, like just what's happening with the infrastructure spend you're seeing, with the cloud wave, the move to the cloud and all that, is really a tailwind for you. Because if you believe there's a world where most of software will move to the cloud, then there has to be a platform that helps you buy and sell that software efficiently. And that's what Flywheel is.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the team. I've got an amazing team of people standing next to me in the Flywheel journey. And we're really grateful for the buyers and the sellers that have partnered with us to really validate a lot of our hypotheses, validate our feature sets, and really move us beyond the MLP to, now this launch. Just to recap, today Flywheel has integrations into AWS, GCP, and Azure. We've done enterprise systems with Coupa and ServiceNow, and also now stand to integrate into various FP&A systems that are being highlighted by buyers like NetSuite and Workday. Pretty powerful stuff. Talk to me about what has your experience been with the Flywillians? That's what I've started calling them, by the way. They may push back on that name, but no one's done it so far. With the Flywheel team that's actually helping build us.
That's great. I haven't seen the T-shirts yet, so it's not official.
We still call them Flywheel. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, team is key, right? In any company at any scale, any stage of their growth, but especially at the early stage, the first few people you bring on board really set the vision and the culture for where the company will eventually go. And I think the results speak for themselves, just how much you've accomplished in such a short period of time. Because it's not just a software product where you're working with a handful of initial teaching customers, which is difficult, but you're building a marketplace. There's multiple parties involved, the buyer side, the seller side, making sure the cloud marketplaces are properly incentivized and they're getting value, the integrations you need to do. And finally, there's a lot of education here. It's a different approach to a problem. So doing all that in a compressed time frame, while at the same time convincing these extremely large customers to give you their business, is a huge challenge. So, kudos to the team on getting through that first few steps, and obviously a long way to go. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, the journey is, I would say, just beginning. Now this accomplishment that we've had with the launch allows us to now enter the race with our hypotheses built out. And now validate continuously, build to optimize continuously, and then scale constantly. Right. So it's a massive opportunity from that perspective as well. Talk to me about the seller side. So we officially launched Beacon. We've kept Beacon under wraps, and we launched it. Why was the seller side important for us to build?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to sort of the nature of a marketplace and the network effect that comes with it, right? So it's great that we're getting all these buyers who want to move their purchasing processes and the way they acquire software to Flywheel. But the other side of that is somebody has to be selling them their software. And I think you have to have both sides kind of transact on the platform, so it's efficient for both sides, and that makes it easier for them. So building that end-to-end journey is important because ultimately you want to make sure the transaction goes through seamlessly. And I think there's also, as we discussed earlier, a natural network effect where the same buyers and sellers show up in different transactions, right? There's many permutations of this. You see a seller for a specific buyer, that seller may show up for a different buyer, and that seller may bring you to a different buyer. So you want both sides are your customers. So I think building that side out is important because it's what ultimately scales the marketplace. And marketplaces typically are buyer constrained or seller constrained in some ways at different points in their life. And I think you've been very thoughtful of attacking each side separately to make sure that no party feels like we're on the platform, but there's no one on the other side for us to work with. So, and just by automating all of that, and finally, this is maybe an obvious thing to say, but every buyer is also a seller in most cases, and every seller is also a buyer. So it just is very natural to build both sides.
Yeah. This was an imperative piece because as we talked about in the beginning of the session, what we realized was let's say the top 20%, we're getting the benefit of cloud marketplace and the attention. We're able to see that scale. The remaining 80%, there's a lot of optimization for them that's available, including a learning path that needed to exist. And now that, we start working with the likes of the Wiz, and even they're saying, hey, this is a better experience. Let's go further, deeper, and wider with you. That is a validating component that hyperscalers did do a lot of things right, but they're building as fast as possible, but there's an opportunity for us to accelerate that journey more so. So we're definitely complementary.
Exactly. And I don't think it's not like as you said, it's not like the 80%, if you optimize, it's taking away from the 20% or even from the marketplaces, right? I think the pie just gets much bigger because it's far more efficient and it's much more sensible to transact there. So as a result, everyone is going to benefit, and you're just the platform enabling that.
Yeah, one of the pieces that we've also realized is that we've seen a growth curve on the average private offers a buyer would do on the marketplace, where the number was traditionally 8 to 12. we're now seeing that number increase at least another 20 to 35%.
That's great.
Right.
That's a great metric, right? It's an early indicator of what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, congratulations. It's great.
Yeah, no, to us, I mean, we're working on that together. I talked a little bit about enablement. That became a pretty big component. We realized very early, and you kind of validated this, that there's a huge learning opportunity or enablement opportunity for both sides, the buyer, the sellers, and I would even argue the hyperscalers as well.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time with the account managers that are the advocates of these sellers and these buyers, and we also want to make their journey more prescriptive. The launch of Flywl University is also something that we're really excited to announce. And your thoughts on enablement that had to almost complement the launch of FUID, Compass, and Beacon was just as essential.
Yeah, I think it's really important because there's so many people who are going to be involved in kind of scaling with the cloud marketplace. I mean, we talked at a high level about the buyers and the sellers and so forth, but within each of these customers, there's multiple teams. And most of them probably are not familiar with how a cloud marketplace works, right? Because they never had to deal with it, or as you said, a lot of the traffic today just goes to a small subset of buyers and sellers. So it's a new way of doing things at some level. It's a very powerful way of doing things, but you have to show that path to people so they understand and realize why it sort of solves their pain point and how they can get value from it. Now, I think Flywl University is a great approach because I think it helps bring that knowledge broadly to everyone, and it also prevents Flywheel from having to go one by one and educate everyone. So I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I think kudos on you. You're building this in parallel to everything else. It's a great effort by the team.
Yeah, I think it was an important piece. You should definitely contribute to a course as well in one of the master classes.
I don't know if you want VCs talking on the university.
Well,
sure.
Well, I think just from a perspective, because you do have a lot of portfolio companies that you represent, and our approach is next to really take those sellers that are thinking about a marketplace strategy, enable them to understand what it means, and then really think about, listing cloud marketplace. But what happens after you're listed?
Yeah.
The general notion of if you list, they will come does not exist.
Yes.
So we need to basically shatter that, but we can tell them prescriptively what are the 5 things they need to do immediately to be able to benefit from it. So I think that's a great thing to consider. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I think the product announcements were great. I think maybe just in terms of what you see is next, and from someone who is now become a believer as let's say a customer, what would you recommend as the next step for them?
Yeah, so obviously our goal is to go after the buyers a lot more, right? So confidence in being able to leverage the systems to actually drive their decisioning. If you are a buyer today who's about to go make a cloud commitment and you are using Marketplace and you're doing it on spreadsheets, like, you need to plug us in.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. We never talked about AI when we raised, and I did that prescriptively because I believe in any reinvention or, we can call this our industrial revolution of our time, but any type of reinvention, if you would, the system needs to first be able to transact, and we need to capture the data. I think as we look at, what's next in the journey, we will start applying a lot more of that automation to see where can we make the buyer processes a lot more simplified. So the key for us is more engagement on the platform, right? Not just transaction, but user engagement, where we can see how can we make their journey a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
Is a track we'll go after.
That's right. And you're building the data set that can ultimately leverage AI. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, exactly. Any advice for us as a company as we get to the next level?
No, I don't have anything. I mean, we talk very often, so I think you guys are doing great. So
Oh, you too much?
no. It's all good. Usually it's good news, so that makes it easier.
Yeah. I know you have the bad news too. But
I know, but usually it's good news. So that's the nice part. But no, keep the focus on the customer. Ultimately, that's all that matters.
Arun, I want to thank you for not only just being our investor, but being such a big champion of the mission that we're building. I can tell you today that you have removed so many hurdles for us, and it's rare to have a venture partner who is actually there to help you really think through the peaks, but also the valleys as well. And in those moments where there's self-doubt that happens as an entrepreneur, I can tell you that you've picked up the phone and walked me off the ledge several times. And so I want to just tell you thank you so much for that. And we're super excited and super bullish about the mission. And now with the amazing set of buyers that are standing next to us and the amazing set of sellers that are allowing us to transact them and the hyperscalers that give us the privilege to integrate within them, the world is our opportunity. And we're so grateful to have you be a part of
And
it.
like I said earlier, thank you for having us as part of the journey. It's been a real pleasure, and looking forward to the next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't be a journey without you. All right. Thank you.